Since the beginning of the MCU, the conspicuous lack of mutants within this world has been one of the most bizarre omissions from the source material. And while this can be easily explained by real-life rights issues between Disney and Fox, the slow integration of mutants into the MCU still needs to be explained by in-universe logic as well as reasoning. As more and more mutants are starting to pop up across the MCU landscape, we are left to wonder why only now mutants are becoming much more well known despite some of the most popular like Professor X, Magneto, and Wolverine all having decades of experience under their belt. How can mutants only just now be a prevalent part of the universe, and where have they been for all of this time? Well, stick with us today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, and let's discuss one prominent theory that explains where the mutants have been and why there have been so few until now. This is not the only video we have regarding why mutants have been so sparse and how the X-Men will eventually be introduced, so we recommend you check out that one as well, but it's still a compelling explanation that warrants mention. We feel it's important to assess all the possible options in order to give you all the possibilities and let you come to your own conclusion regarding which theory you like best. For this particular video, we will be evaluating the theory that Hydra has actually been assassinating mutants for decades, dwindling their numbers and allowing for very few survivors since the turn of the war. This specific theory can be traced all the way back to Captain America the Winter Soldier, which takes place in 2014, and this date will be important in just a moment for our theory. Here, we learn of Project Insight, which is Hydra's master plan to assassinate anyone who can stand in their way with the push of a button, using Zola's algorithm to deduce the likelihood of potential threats arising to challenge the organization. While this takes into account things like voting patterns, political affiliations, medical histories, and other factors, we know that Hydra has been conducting assassinations in the shadows for decades, even before Project Insight and long before the algorithm was ever completed. We can see this simply due to the Winter Soldier program, which was a clandestine network of assassins that have been operational for decades. It's therefore not unreasonable to assume that among Hydra's list of attributes to assess, potentially dangerous genetic mutations would be a particular red flag for them. After all, Hydra was nearly crippled by the individual who is regarded as the world's first superhero, and it stands to reason that anyone who could pose a physical threat like that would be a prime target for assassination, and Hydra would have taken extreme note. Most heroes have been unpredictable in their transformations into superheroism. It's much more difficult to predict Tony Stark's kidnapping or Doctor Strange's car accident than it is to predict how a genetic mutation will affect the future of an individual's life. We do know that Doctor Strange was on Hydra's radar, but we have our own explanation for that, which we also recommend you check out. But individuals like Carol Danvers, Thor, and the Hulk would be nearly impossible to predict, explaining why they ultimately survived what they did. We also don't currently know if Wolverine fought in World War II, and if he fought against Hydra at the same time as Captain America. If he did though, then this would be reasonable to assume that Hydra wants to nullify anyone like Wolverine from rising up yet again to challenge them. If they can trace this back to specific genetic mutations, then they may very well commission assassinations to do their bidding. Hydra's Winter Soldier program has been active since their supposed fall at the end of the First World War, assassinating the likes of Howard Stark and Maria Stark in addition to who knows how many others. If Hydra has S.H.I.E.L.D.'s resources, then they could have all but eradicated mutant kind as soon as mutations began to take form. But then why is this year 2014 so important to this theory? In the current MCU, the year is around 2024 as the events of She-Hulk, meaning anyone born around 2014 would be roughly 10 years old. Mutations in the original source material begin to manifest somewhere around puberty, which typically takes place around 12 or 13, give or take. This means that any mutants born after the fall of Hydra will begin developing their mutations in the next few years, and the population of mutants to survive Hydra's grip will begin to skyrocket very soon. As more mutants reach maturity, the more cases of bizarre powers and abilities would theoretically become much more widespread across the world, as more children develop strange powers, making mutants much more widely known to the general populace of the MCU. It also explains how some mutants like Wolverine, Professor X, and Magneto can be well-established mutants under this explanation. Logan was born long before the rise of Hydra, and it stands to reason that there is very little Hydra could have done to kill him, even if they knew about his whereabouts. In the original comic line, Magneto was already a Holocaust survivor, though it's unclear if this will be the case in the MCU, seeing as Magneto would have to be well into his 80s with this to make sense. Any other mutants with some years of experience could simply be explained to be survivors of Hydra's Hydra's attacks, leaving the likes of Cyclops, Storm, Beast, and whomever else as veteran superheroes who have been living in hiding for years now as they evade Hydra's genocidal attacks against them. Now that Hydra has been completely disbanded so far as we can tell, mutants will be more able to live in relative freedom. Though their storyline still revolves largely around persecution in the public eye, they may not be actively hunted by Hydra or others anymore. In our original theory, we proposed that many of the fan-favorite X-Men characters are currently in hiding, and the rise of all of these new mutants will be the catalyst for either the formation or the reformation of the school of the X-Men. If Professor Xavier sees that more and more children are developing powers, he might be inspired to track down his former students who used to live in hiding, enlisting their help to teach the next generation how to harness their gifts for the betterment of humanity. What this theory does not explain, however, is Magneto, and where he has been this whole time. Magneto, having survived the persecution for years, would be incredibly likely to rise up against Hydra, and take much more public stand against Hydra and those who sought to assassinate him, and this likely would have to be a notable event in the MCU. One particular explanation is that this event, or this battle, was not traced back to mutation, it was simply an anomaly that the general population didn't fully understand yet. After all, we are not seeing everything that's ever happened in the MCU, and until recently, we had no idea that Carol Danvers, or the Eternals, existed in the distant past of the MCU as we know. So it's not unreasonable to believe that more happened than we currently know about in the lore, though what all that entails is still yet to be seen. But anyway, my friends, and watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, what do you think about this theory? Do you think that Hydra may have been hunting down mutants? And if so, who of them do you think survived, and what do you think the outcome will ultimately be? Does this explain a lot, and do you think that Hydra targeted mutants in the first place? Which mutants could be out there in the MCU that we don't currently know about yet? As always, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching and continuing to support the channel. Hit that subscribe button to assemble and join our team, and I hope that you have a great day.